The Broncos have agreed to terms to trade Bradley Chubb, the Pro Bowl pass rusher, to the Miami Dolphins, and we are here to break it down. Phil Milani, joined by Eric Dalala, who somehow got left back in Europe, huh?
Yeah, Phil, they didn't let you come on the trip, so they made me stay over here. It's kind of a trade-off.
Makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. Let's dive into this decision to trade Bradley Chubb here. Obviously, for both you and me, a tough time just to say goodbye to a guy like Bradley, but it's a move that made sense for the Broncos.
Yeah, Phil, let's start there because I think Bradley Chubb, the person, this is obviously a business. He recognizes that. The Broncos recognize that. But this is a guy that he's gone through a lot here the last few seasons, battling injuries, trying to come back and help this team, becoming a team captain. So not easy to see him go. But you're right, Phil, for a number of reasons, it makes sense from a football perspective. I think those top reasons are you have a lot of pass rushers. Randy Gregory, you signed him in free agency. He should be coming back soon. Baron Browning, he moved over to outside linebacker this offseason. Again, he should be coming back from injury pretty quickly here. And then, of course, you spend your top pick on Nick Bonito, who has come on the last couple of games. So for as good as Bradley Chubb was, this was a position where you had a lot of options. And the Broncos needed draft picks, Phil, just 2 third-round picks. That's all they had in the top 100 next year. So to get a first-round pick for Bradley Chubb and give yourself some flexibility moving forward, it was paramount for this team.
Yeah, and you've heard Broncos GM George Paton talk about the way that you build and sustain success in this league is by drafting and developing guys. Of course, he made the decision to go out and get Russell Wilson, gave up those draft picks, but he had to find a way to get something back here. And I'm assuming that when he started testing the waters, or if people were calling him about Bradley Chubb, when the idea of a first-round pick came up, then that was just something that the Broncos had to jump on.
Yeah, you think back to Von Miller last year, you get a second-round pick and a third-round pick to get and that gives you the chance to go get Russell Wilson and still have draft capital. And so you're right, to get a first-round pick, that's hard to pass up. And not just because you get a young, talented player, hopefully, and we've seen George Paton really hit on some of his top picks, whether it's Pat Surtain, Javonte Williams, like I said, Nick Bonito starting to come on, and Greg Dulcich obviously has looked really good here through 3 weeks. But it also, Phil, from a financial standpoint, is just the reality of having one of the top paid quarterbacks in the league is that you need to build your team with draft picks, with guys on rookie contracts. And so you can't pay everybody, and to hopefully get a player in the first round next year that is, a difference maker. That's really important. And Phil, the other thing too, you could also trade down and pick up a couple of picks. So just a lot more flexibility here for the Broncos now.
Yeah, if you're watching this, you might be thinking, okay, isn't the idea to draft players like Bradley Chubb and keep them, and that's how you build a team? Yes, that's true, but I think that you've also seen what life is like in the NFL without a premier quarterback. So if you want to have that premier quarterback who's not on a rookie deal, you got to pay that player, and then that means that you got to make sacrifices elsewhere, and that's just part of the reality here. And they can go out and draft a position of need now and make the overall roster better. At least that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And listen, you have some, like we mentioned, you have some young guys at edge rusher that you think you can build around and develop. Bradley Chubb did, great guy, did struggle with injuries at times during his career. So you have to consider that as well. But you're right, there's other positions of need here that might be more pressing. The Broncos at some point have to figure out a way, whether it's the offensive line, other positions along the defense that you've just got to invest in here in order to keep this a solid team. And I think that's one of the keys for me, Phil, is just because they made this deal, it does not signify that the Broncos have deemed this, this push a failure. They still have strong expectations, high expectations for this season and moving forward. George Paton, he released a statement, Phil, and he said, Super Bowl is still our goal here. And so just because you've traded away Bradley Chubb, it doesn't mean that your ultimate goal has changed.
Yeah, because you got to send a message if you're George to this Broncos locker room, like, hey, we hate to say goodbye to Bradley, but the expectations are still the same here. It's not like we're giving up on the rest of this season.
The player's job is to go out and do their best every single day, every single game, Coach Hackett's job is to go out and try to get these guys ready to win a game. George Paton has an interesting position here. It's different than anybody else because he's got to balance the future and the current day roster, the Broncos' current goals. And so it's a tricky spot to be in. But I think with the depth you still have at this position, with the other playmakers you have on this defense, whether it's Pat Surtain or Justin Simmons or Draymond Jones, like we mentioned, Randy Gregory coming back, those guys can continue to help you have a good defense. And I think you can still get some wins this year, but this is a move that ultimately is going to help you in the future.
Yeah, most definitely. And you mentioned Draymond Jones there. I mean, he's a guy who needs to get paid as well. So the Broncos definitely having to balance the future and this current team. So we'll hear from George Paton a little bit later today. But that's the initial thoughts on why this trade made sense and what it means for the Broncos moving forward here. Bradley Chubb, 26 career sacks in 4.5 seasons in Denver since being the 5th overall pick in 2018. Sad to see him go, but wish him all the best as he joins a 5-3 Miami team looking to make a push now this season. That's going to do it for us from Eric Dalala in Europe. The sacrifices you're making to join us and give us your thoughts. Thank you so much.
I do what I can, Phil.
All right, that's going to do it for us. For Eric Dalala, I'm Phil Mahoney.